Namaskar. In this edition of Right Angle, I like to discuss something which you all must be knowing, which all must have watched over the last 3 days, and that is the no confidence motion against Prime Minister Narendra Modi led in the government. That was brought out by the Congress party and its allies in their newly formed I.N.D.I.A or India, quote unquote. This debate took place over 3 days, and the question that arises in one's mind is who eventually won. And when I am talking of winning, I am not talking of this sheer numbers. Of course, this motion didn't have any chance, given the overwhelming majority of the NDA led by Prime Minister Modi. But actually, the opposition parties, they wanted to score some political points, and they wanted to convey some message to the people of the country. In that strategy of theirs, or in pursuance of that strategy of theirs, have they really succeeded? I think that is the question, and I'll answer it towards the fag end of what I am going to discuss with you. And I am looking at this debate from a different angle, which unfortunately, or rather in my opinion, that deserves attention, but it has not got due attention in the country by any media house or by any other apt political observers of the country, and that is the respect for the democratic institutions of the country. As you know, the Congress party, particularly under the leadership of Mr. Rahul Gandhi, has been talking of the erosion, and even other critics of this Modi government, they all the time have been highlighting the erosion of the vital institutions or democratic or the constitutional offices or the institutions of the country over the last 9 years. I am not entering into any debate on that, because I think if you go by facts and figures, that is highly debatable, that proposition is highly debatable. But the two things that I really wanted to highlight and that came through, or rather that was reflected and that deserves due attention from this no confidence motion that was debated over the last 3 days, are like this. 2 points, and when one talks of this institutional values. Number one, do these opposition parties led by the Congress believe in the sanctity of the parliament? The point is, if you really believe in the sanctity of the parliament, then there are 2-3 things you have to observe, and you have to prove that you really believe in its sanctity. There are rules, there are procedures, and whether it is in the Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha, they are run by the speaker in the Lok Sabha and the chairman in the Rajya Sabha, who also happens to be the country's vice president. So the point is, you from the beginning of this parliamentary session have been demanding that you only want to discuss Manipur, nothing else. And not only you will be discussing Manipur, you want how that discussion will take place, under what rules. But the most important point that you are demanding is that the Prime Minister must be present, and the presiding officers must summon the Prime Minister, that you be there and you give some speech on, or rather you tell what your view is on Manipur. The point is precisely this: if you are so concerned about these parliamentary institutions and the values, then you must be very consistent on this. Because of your obsession with this discussion on Manipur, you literally are not, or were not, allowing the parliament to function. Though there are many other vital constitutional amendments or important bills that were presented to the parliament, and they got really passed despite your stiff resistance. The point is, are there not any important issues, like some bill on the fishermen from Kerala got passed, some bill on your forest conservation got passed, some vital bills on the scheduled tribes and scheduled castes got passed. Then I think something about this your data protection, that also got. But these are very vital and very important bills, and you did not participate in any one of these. But when the contentious services amendment pertaining to the Delhi government came, you all came, you all participated both in Lok Sabha as well as in the Rajya Sabha. Is that not a great contradiction on your part? That means so many other important legislations were debated, you did not participate in that, but you are not consistent in sticking to your policy of boycotting or not allowing the parliament to function as long as Prime Minister Modi does not come to the house and discuss things about the unfortunate happenings that have been going on in Manipur. If you would have been consistent in your demand, then you also should have boycotted this thing. That means by participating selectively in the services amendment bill as far as Delhi government is concerned, but boycotting this thing, but boycotting or rather creating problems and not allowing the parliament to function under the plea of the unfortunate incidents or happenings in Manipur, means you are actually not concerned about the happenings and the tragedies in Manipur. You precisely are trying to make a political point, or what we in English, everybody must be, you all must be knowing, there is something called fishing in the troubled water. So you really have no concern whatsoever about the tragedy in Manipur. You really wanted to fish in the troubled water. So that is one thing. As I said, this disrespect towards the institution of parliament. And what is the second? As I said, there are two important issues that disrespect to the vital institutions of the country. That second one is, which nobody is talking of, or rather paying due attention, as I at the beginning said, it demanded more attention from the political observers. That is something called the institution of cabinet or council of ministers in a parliamentary form of government. which India has. You know, there is no mention of Prime Minister singularly in our constitution or in any parliamentary form of government. Prime Minister, as any student of political science knows, is the primus inter pares, in the sense that he is the first among equals. There is a council of ministers which aids and advises the President of India, in whose name the country is governed. It is not the Prime Minister alone. Everything is not done by the Union Cabinet, the Council of Ministers, and there is something called the collective responsibility. What is the meaning of collective responsibility? Collective responsibility means anything that the government of India does, and the same also applies in case of the councils of ministers in the states. Anything the government does, for that all the council, all the ministers or all the cabinet ministers particularly are collectively responsible. Suppose somebody is a minister of tribal welfare, for instance. Something wrong happens. You cannot blame the concerned minister of tribal and welfare. It is the collective responsibility. Suppose something wrong happens, the failure is that of the entire cabinet. For instance, whether it is Home Minister Amit Shah or Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, or for that matter even the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, they are also equally responsible if anything wrong happens in the ministry which is being now looked after by Mr. Arjun Munda. So that is called the collective responsibility. And in this collective responsibility, there are many, cabinet means there are many ministers. So when the internal security or any such thing, there is the constitutional provision, somebody's direct responsibility is that of the Union Home Minister. So if anything happens in Manipur or in any state of the country or in any territory or any part of the Indian territory, then that will be looked after by obviously the Union Home Minister, but the responsibility is that of everybody. It is a collective responsibility. So for that matter, if the opposition parties, they wanted some answers from the government of India on what is happening in Manipur, various acts of omission and commission failures on the part of the government, if the Home Minister is answering that, that means the entire Modi cabinet is answering to your questions. Because under this principle of collective responsibility, whatever Mr. Amit Shah says on Manipur, that is the stand of the Modi government as a whole. There cannot be a situation when Mr. Amit Shah will be saying something on Manipur and Mr. Narendra Modi as the Prime Minister will contradict it, or the vice versa. In that case, that is no cabinet, there is no collective responsibility. So, the very fact that you only insisted that only Narendra Modi can answer, the Prime Minister can answer to your questions on Manipur, but not the Union Home Minister, who right from the very beginning has been saying he is prepared to answer you and discuss things pertaining to Manipur, whether it is in Lok Sabha or whether it is in Rajya Sabha. You are saying no, no. So what respect you have for the institutions of this country, the democratic institution of this country. The Union Council of Ministers is a vital institution, democratic institution as far as the Indian democracy is concerned, and you are challenging its very basic character, that Amit Shah is nothing, Rajnath Singh is nothing, no other minister is nothing, and Prime Minister is everything. Who has given you that right? Who has given you that right? And what moral right or the otherwise you have when you say that there has been a great erosion of the institutional values in India under the Modi government over the last 9 years? When you yourself, if there is any party which is degrading the vital institutions of India, earlier we all know that how they were criticizing even the judiciary, that judiciary is captive, but now suppose 2-3 recent judgments of the judiciary have come in their favor, the judiciary is all right. That means any institution that runs as per your dictates or as per your expectations, dictates is too strong a word, as per your expectations, that means those institutions are very fine and healthy. If those institutions, in pursuance of their duties that have been entrusted to them under the Constitution, do something and which is contrary to your expectation, then you say that they have been compromised. So, overall, as I said, these are the two important aspects of this no confidence motion that the opposition got, or rather brought. And then I am not going into this how utterly unethical it is that you bring the no confidence motion, and when the Prime Minister replies, and in the midst of it you walk away. So that really reflects your sincerity, that reflects on your really what I'll say, that belief in the constitutional values of this country. So for me, this episode really have thrown a very poor light on this opposition led by the Congress party. On the other hand, what exactly you achieved, that question will be answered at the very fag end of my talk. You really provided a great opportunity to the government, because no confidence motion cannot be on one particular specific topic. So you provided the government and its articulate ministers over the last 3 days utilize these opportunities like never before in highlighting to the people of the country the achievements of the Modi government. So, as Prime Minister in his speech today said that the opposition, actually the bowling of opposition was so poor and the fielding was also so pathetic that the government and its spokespersons or the ministers and its ruling party MPs only went for 4s and 6s. Thank you very much.